Awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody for jumping on this week. Welcome to the GoDaddy community meetups for small business, where our intention is to foster small business through stories, where people can listen, learn, and leverage. Each week, we try to share some values, some experience, and some stories that will hopefully shed some light and empower you to make a decision on your entrepreneurial journey that's just going to perpetuate and catalyze you into the success you want. So thank you, everybody, for joining today. Our guest today is Ben LaCoss with Insperity. He is a man of many words. He's met so many people, thousands of in-depth conversations with just amazing business owners and executives. He calls himself the world's largest puddle of small business knowledge. And he's just infatuated with small business. And I'm so excited to share his story and his perspective today. We're gonna have the community members introduce themselves real quick, Ben, so you know who's here to support you.
Awesome.
I'll go first. I'm your moderator today, Adam with CLARAfi, and I appreciate you guys for being here. Patty, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Patty Farmer with Patty Farmer International. I'm a marketing strategist, helping you to create marketing strategies that are profitable, not painful.
Wonderful. What about you, Rachel?
Hey everybody, Rachel Makool from GoDaddy. I manage community experiences, part of which is this LinkedIn group. I'm very appreciative of all of what Adam does every week and bringing wonderful guests. And the other really exciting news for the group today is we are adding a bunch of people today. I'm trying to figure out where the promotion is coming from. But Jonathan and I have been chatting this morning already. We have over 100 more new members. So that is super exciting. And so if you guys jump in after this and just welcome people, that would be really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That speaks to the community. Thank you guys for your support in building this. Jonathan.
Hi, my name is Jonathan. I work on the GoDaddy social media team in the engagement sort of portion of it. So talking to customers and building response strategies around how we show up on social media and working closely with Rachel and Adam on developing this community, and just as excited about today's boost. That's a great surprise.
I'm Julie. I have Stick and Stack, which is eco-friendly stickers. They're made out of recycled water bottles. And yeah, anything you can put on a shirt, we can put on we call them patch sticks.
Yeah, thanks for being here and great to have you as part of the community. Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
I am Jeff Burrs. I'm a business performance advisor as well at Insperity, and probably one of Ben's biggest fans. So I enjoy all his insight and Insperity family.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thanks for the support. We appreciate that. We got fan club. Ben, without further ado, why don't you introduce us to who you are, what you do, and the story that led you to Insperity and working with small business.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So my name is Ben LaCoss. I am a business performance advisor here with Insperity. And, it's kind of funny. My origin story started back when I went to this little tiny private liberal arts college in California. And I was looking for a standard business degree, and they didn't offer one. So I came across this thing called organizational studies, and I was told by my advisor, that's kind of, this is kind of our version. I was like, all right, great. That's what I'll be my major. And then turns out, fast forward, that this is exactly what I'm passionate about, is learning how groups of individuals moving towards a common goal, whether it's in a for-profit or a nonprofit world, how they coexist, the challenge, how they overcome challenges, et cetera. So, having moved into what we were, in this world that we call, business, right? Now I'm working with small businesses, anywhere from startups to, 250 employee companies that are looking to figure out ways to move from just being a great business to becoming a great employer. And that subject matter has certainly changed as of, let's say the last 15 months, and it's changed probably in the last week, in the last 2 weeks, et cetera. So good to be here.
Yeah, I love that you led with being a great employer. I mean, obviously, we all read the news, we see things that are going on, and right now people are leaving and quitting in mass exodus, and they are jumping out there knowing that there's a talent shortage. So talk to us a little bit about what you see amongst small businesses and how some people are trying to transition or change the way they're approaching this conundrum as going from good to great, you know, in
Yeah.
small business?
Well, I think it's an interesting situation. So, you know, you look at where we were before all this, there were some commonalities among great employers, and I'll just briefly hit those. They could find really good people, keep them on board as long as possible, and then get rid of the bad apples, right? That was one thing. They're also able to appeal to all sorts of people. So they'd appeal to every single person on this call in different ways, you know, through wages, of course, but comp and benefits, and then, you know, ways that they could have awards, recognition, right? That gets the maximum out of each person. And then they also maximize revenue per employee through having great processes and onboarding and all this great stuff, right? That was what it took to be a great employer. Okay, and then things changed, right? So now the bar has been raised where, you know, any decent employer, that's the bare minimum they have to be able to do, right? And so what we're seeing is now that, you know, the status quo isn't acceptable anymore. And it's not only just me being the canary in the coal mine, you know, making noise and telling business owners, they're having people walk out of their office, right? And saying, I'm done, right? So we knew this issue was kind of come, 5+ years ago, right? When the baby boomers moving out, we knew that there's going to be 50% of the workforce being millennials, totally different change. And at that time, people in my business, we were preaching that, and we were often, admittedly, falling on deaf ears. Well, all COVID did was just simply accelerate that time frame, right? So boomers moved out, they retired, they just decided, forget it, right? Then you had a situation where now you've got people that are moving, you know, parents who aren't working for a flexible employer that can handle their own situation. We've all seen articles recently on LinkedIn about women leaving the workforce just completely, right? It's really challenging. So now it's, you know, there's different things and that employers have to do to be a great employer today. So it's definitely challenging. I'm happy to kind of share on that piece as well, specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all curious as to how people are finding the availability to really bridge the gap, because so many of us were made aware that things were going to change and we have to adapt or die.
Yeah.
And it started with the boomers and the new generationals coming in and kind of challenging the dialogue and how we interacted. But we can't go back to 2019. 2020 just shoved us ahead. So I would love if you shed some light on what employers are doing to kind of like rise to the occasion.
So the first thing that employers have to do is they have to accept it, right? They can't fight it. And what we're seeing, I'm talking to small businesses, you know, on a regular basis, and there's still quite a few that they're going with the hope as a strategy that it's going to go back. And the first step is acceptance, right? And then it's now what, right? So in terms of how they're specifically doing it, they are having to first look back and identify what, reflection-wise, what did work during this period, what didn't. Is our makeup of our staff, do we want to keep that? You know, I was talking to a company today, headquartered in Michigan, and their complete business flipped around. And I asked them, I said, hey, I didn't see anybody on LinkedIn that has the term sale or the title sales. Actually, no, we completely changed. Now we're going after elephant hunting, you know, as opposed to going around shooting squirrels. So so the smart businesses, the great employers are out there trying to identify first what worked, what didn't, and do we need to change? And then identifying, okay, what we do know is that the great employers are abandoning the must-do attitude. So if I'm working for somebody and they tell me, Ben, you got to do this, you better tell me why you think so, and you better be prepared for me to tell you, no, I can go elsewhere. So they have to abandon that must-do attitude. They truly have to be flexible and looking towards, hey, we need to market ourselves as being a flexible employer, right? So when we're putting out job ads, are we still doing the bullet points of your job duties? Or are we saying, hey, yeah, we got the benefits, we've got all that cool stuff, we're a great company to work for, but here's what we offer. We offer 2 days a week working from home. Okay, what we know is, there are a few different studies, we know that one, which was, I'm going to use the shocking number, was 75% of people were willing to take a pay cut, and the average pay cut they were willing to take was 14% to be able to work from home 2 days a week. 75%, and then we're willing to take a 14% pay cut to work from home 2 days a week, right? So how about we start marketing that way? Everybody's driven by every business possible and seeing the now hiring, all shifts, all that type of stuff. Bonus, $500, people don't care, right? That's what they're doing. So the great employers are marketing their flexibility. They're truly being flexible, and they're having plans in place to be able to accommodate accordingly.
Well, and that's the elephant in the room, right? It's the new normal. That's why we're all here. I mean, look at me. I'm at home.
Yeah.
And we have employers that they've done a great job of being flexible and moving forward. We've had other employers that want to move back to the originality of being in person, and there's reasons why they do that. And then there are some that just don't know how to either be a hybrid or give consideration. And employees know this. They know that considerations are more important to them than the cost, because if you let somebody stay at home, they've got considerations for taking care of their family. It shows that you trust them, and there's expenses that they don't have to worry about anymore, like travel and parking and all of that. So there's reasons for it. So Patty's got a question, and I want to have her ask this question, but after her question, I'd love to talk about how people are bridging the gap between virtual remote work and IRL in real life.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Pat.
Sure. So when I was listening to you, here's what first popped up for me. I don't know if it pops up for anybody else, but here's what popped up for me, because I have 6 employees that work for me. And I do feel like being more flexible, understanding where they're at, it's a different world we have right now, is true. But I also feel that they're hearing that all the time too. And some of them are kind of coming to the table with this like entitlement attitude, like, oh, the world has changed and you've got to give me this and this, or like you said, be prepared for them to just say no. And, really honestly, you could say no and you could get fired, right? I mean, so there's got to be a middle ground there where as employers, we still are like meeting them and saying, yes, we do understand this.
I would say in terms of that, one of the things we're seeing to be very successful is having, whether you're going fully remote, whether you're going hybrid, whether you're going all in, right, or in real life, right, whichever model you're going, I think starts with communication and having policies in place. Even with 6 employees, one that it can be really challenging actually to have a small number of employees, because everyone feels like we're a family, right? Well, I love my family, but they drive me crazy too, right? So just because we're family doesn't mean anything. We got to have, the rules of the road. So in terms of what that flexibility means, is it wrong for us to define what that means, right? Is it wrong for us to look at, okay, you're used to walking your dog, during the workday. You're used to being able to run errands. You might be used to taking care of personal stuff during the work week. Well, what if we looked at the departments, and let's say it's a little bit, maybe a slightly larger company where there's departments. Maybe we look at, hey, let's define your flexibility day. So employee A, why don't you have your flexibility day be Monday and Wednesday, and employee B, you can have Tuesday, Thursday, and what have you. And so the flexibility day means, hey, those are your days where you can feel free to take care of personal things during the workday, assuming you get your work done, right? So there's some accountability and communication, but that all starts with a plan, right? Kind
of like teenagers, right? You do this and you get privileges, right? It's kind of like when you're raising teenagers, right? But the thing also seems like there was a reason that we outsourced to freelancers, right? And we didn't have employees, right? And then you get to a point in your business where you have to make the decision that there were certain guidelines that the government and IRS and whatever made for us that said, oh, well, if you do XYZ, these things, they are employees. Correct. And you have to move to an employee model. Yep. And so you have to, I feel like, I'm not saying it's wrong, don't get me wrong, I'm totally agreeing with you, but I'm just saying that there's this little bit more of a dance there now where I feel like I'm offering employee benefits, but I'm not saying I'm getting, but I feel like sometimes what they're asking for is they want to be treated like a freelancer, but they want to get paid like an employee and all the benefits like an employee.
Right. Best of both worlds, right? Yeah, they want the cake to eat it too. They want the flexibility to do whatever they want, but they also want the security that that paycheck's coming in. Yeah. And it's, you know, every company is trying to have it figured out. The challenge that we're seeing is that everything's flying at the, you know, business owners, executives. The world hasn't slowed down, and yet they also have to adapt to this whole thing. And that's where having, you know, trusted partnerships, trusted advisors that can help you take a step back and evaluate from the objective third party side of things and say, hey, we've seen how this can work better. Here's a suggestion, right? It's your business, you make that decision. But that's where that investment in finding an expert to be able to do those things for you and be that person for you, that could be worth its weight in gold.
And I got to just chime in right now, Patty. That was so much value from your perspective as a business owner and having that conversation. And that's exactly what it needs to be. It needs to be conversation, not confrontation, because the entire world changed. And sometimes the question's driven by fear. Sometimes it's driven by intrigue. Sometimes they just want to test and see, you know, exactly how flexible you are and how direct you're going to be. And people want to see consistency. And if you can't be consistent, then they're automatically going to go look at options anywhere, regardless of how good you think you're making that offer happen. And Ben, to what you said, as a value being a mediator and an advisor, I think there's value in that, because in 2020, when you came through and said, I neglected you, I'm sorry I neglected you because I treated you as a contractor, not an employee, that's a hard conversation to have. But like, I work with domestic workers, and in 2020 was a travesty for them. It was a train wreck because they didn't have qualifications to get unemployment because they weren't being treated properly. And it was just this crazy confrontation that came out of it, and something beautiful, you know, evolved out of that. But at first it was just abrasive and it was nasty and it was just pointing fingers. And it was something that had just been taken for granted. People wanted to be treated as contractors, but they also wanted privileges as employees. But now there's this conversation of, okay, how can we do better? How can we make sure that you're protected in the event this ever happens again? And how can I meet your needs and you meet my obligations, right? It's a conversation. And if everybody creates ideas, they own the ideas. And if you have a mediator, it takes the pressure off of everybody that's involved.
Very good point. Very good point.
So I'm going to raise my hand. I've got some thoughts on this whole subject. I think it's really interesting. You know, obviously Jonathan and I work for a larger company, and we've had a lot of movement. You know, I've seen people leave, and for many different reasons, because I've talked to multiple coworkers who are leaving or have left. And the pandemic has been, for a lot of people, psychologically challenging, right? And all other challenges, but psychologically challenged. And I think a lot of people have thought about what's important to them. And so I don't think that's bad. I think it's good to reevaluate at certain points in your career, like what is important to you. And working with people, whether it's a small business owner or larger corporation, anything in between, you've got to feel like that whoever you work with cares about you and wants the best for you, right? And so if somebody doesn't feel that way, I always say, like, you know, try to help them. If not, then let them go, because they may not be the right person to work with. And you're going to find somebody else that is more motivated to be part of your team, to help you to grow your business, and to feel, you know, not necessarily that sense of entitlement, but feel happy to be a part of your team. And so change is inevitable. People move, but the movement is definitely very clear right now, greater than, you know, previous. And then the other thing is, a lot of people didn't move last year. So we're seeing, I think, just more people doing it now, because we're seeing less people. Obviously, the pandemic is starting, hopefully, to you know, come to a close over time. And so people are feeling that they can move now. And so we're just kind of making up for time from last year.
Yeah, I think for the Julie, do you wanna?
Sorry, I have a question too. And along the same lines, I hear what you're saying, but too, What tools or practices are you using for accountability? So if you have people being flexible and wanting different schedules and different times, do you guys have best practices of how to keep track of accountability and making sure that things are still getting done, or timelines longer now since people want more flexible, maybe working less hours? What are some of those business practices that you're implementing to keep them, but also keep the business running?
Yeah, I think the kind of the question is, how do we maintain accountability even though there's been, with change, et cetera. So in terms of accountability and how to manage that in a more remote workforce with flexibility, et cetera, one of the things that I would first start with is, looking at who is the person managing. Is it myself? Am I the small business owner that is essentially the de facto manager? Okay, well, there being a fully remote manager leader, whether it's yourself or you have got a team of managers, that requires a specific set of skills. And just to think that we were successful doing that in person and now we're going to be successful doing that fully remote, it's very different, right? Because inevitably what happens in time of crisis as human beings, we go to, I need to control more. Right? So you'll see that in sales orgs, when you see numbers go down, the first thing people do is micromanage, right? We've seen it in every single sales organization out there is that you see that micromanaging. So what happened when we lost control and people started working remotely and we didn't see them all the time? What do? We micromanage to the second. I need this report. I need the morning check-ins, afternoon check-ins, evening check-ins, check-in before bed, right? It was absolutely ridiculous, but it's a natural tendency. So now we have to be trained, and each person needs to be developed. And that isn't something that's just as easy as reading a book. That takes expertise, and with some sort of advisor who can lead you along that path to develop yourself and or your managers. Now, in terms of how you're going to do that, then from there, it's once you have that skill set and you can do these things without Zoom fatigue and you can keep climate and culture going without all this sort of thing, then it's, that's where it's going to be very company specific. It's going to be things that, hey, again, what is the ideal? Do we have a policy? Do we have a roadmap? Do we have a plan? Do we have a communication plan? Do we have a safety and compliance plan in place? Do we have a who, what, where, when, and most importantly nowadays, of course, why are we having people show up? Why do things need to be done by this time? What sort of communication are we going to expect from a turnaround time? Right? How quickly, if I send you an email, Adam, how quickly is it required that I get a note back? What about a text message? Should we be texting? Right? Should I send you a tweet? I don't know. Right? So we've got to have these things in place because people play a lot better in the playground if they know the rules. I hope that helped answer the question.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said in both of your questions, Julie, and what you offered there, Ben. At the end of the day, if you can define the line and have everybody on board creating the momentum together on what their goals are, when you create them together, you own them together. And there's a big difference between working on purpose and working on a purpose, right? So if you're going to work on purpose, you've got to have a mediator. You got to have partnerships that are going to help define the line, take the pressure off of acting like you're delegating, especially from a distance, and then get back to why you're in business and why they love their jobs. So I think that's important. I think that's valuable. I love this discussion. Patty, you had a question real quick, and then Jonathan.
I just wanted to say really quick that I think what we're all talking about is that conversation is super important. And one of the things I noticed for the people who work for me is that when we had that conversation, when everybody was at home, one of the things that they figured out for them, which as entrepreneurs, we kind of figured out early on, was that we had like a time of day that was our most creative, right? And so allowing them to work in that creative zone when they said, oh, I like working in the morning and this one feels that they can do the best job at this time. But within that, like what Ben said, accountability, that sounds great. But this person over here that needs this done first in order to be able to do what their job is, they can't just be sitting around because you like to work in the afternoon and they started in the morning, right? So there was a little bit of getting that. And once everybody as a team really understood that yes, you're going to be flexible for me. I think that's really great, but I do understand that there is somebody else that's the next person that needs that. And how can we navigate that? Everybody really kind of came together as a team once they really understood that, yeah, it's great, but it's still not all about me, right? You know, and stuff. And then just having deadlines and just really saying, you know, yes, we're going to do this, but we still have to adhere to those deadlines. Worked really, really well for us, but the conversation was key.
There you go.
And I'll just jump in because I think, I mean, Patty, I think that's so, I totally not expected to hear that, but when we were talking about playing by the rules, like that's it, you find out what the rules are. And sometimes you have to make those rules up as you go, especially when it's something we've never really done before, right? This whole en masse work from home situation was, you know, really threw a lot of people for a loop. And it took a long time to get, even myself, to get my footing on, you know, what does my day-to-day look like? How, you know, what are my, you know, are the hours the same? Have the hours changed? And it became something where very clearly over the first few weeks that we were working remote, that it was just the same, and that my company trusted me to do my work and my team trusted me to do my work. And I have to say, I've never felt more loyal to a company before, simply because they did allow me to sort of learn how to do this at my own speed. But they also never have pressured me to do anything I didn't want to do. They've been very communicative. And this isn't just like advertisement for GoDaddy, but the bottom line is like, I think there's a lot of times it's different speaking for like a very small business versus a large place like GoDaddy. But even companies, you know, when we worked in WeWork, the New York team was very small as well. I'm kind of thinking of other places right now. But I think there's this, you know, and I see on LinkedIn all the time about the, you know, the Wells Fargo CEO or the, you know, some Wall Street CEO having an ultimatum about, you know, you have to be in office, blah, blah, blah. I think there's this big illusion that kind of lived for a very long time in my, you know, in my parents' generation. And this idea that if you don't show up to work, you're not a good employee. If you take time off, if you take vacation, it's because you don't care. And it's like, that's not true. And we've learned throughout this experience, through being forced into this experience, that is not true. I have never, ever in my career, at this company in particular, held myself more accountable for getting things done on time, simply because I know that this is new for a lot of people. And there is that accountability. There is that people want to make sure that I'm getting my stuff done. And if I'm able to do this, you know, I work in New York City. And the idea that I don't have to leave my apartment an hour before work to take a subway, to get to Times Square, to work in freaking Times Square all day and then come back another hour, like just the fact that I can have that commute time to myself makes me that much more incentivized to be on top of my game and to do good work for my team. And I think there's this, and it, you know, it's an interesting conversation because it's different for everyone, right? It really does boil down a lot of times to personal preference. Patty, what you're saying about working in the morning versus working in the evening, you know, if it's very polarizing, it causes some issues. But I can't tell you how many times I've just worked, you know, our team is West Coast. Our team is West Coast. Like GoDaddy's always on the East Coast. The social team's always been 3 hours ahead. So every single meeting we've been in my duration there's always been someone on a video call. There's always been someone remote on our team who has been an integral part of that. And I love hearing, Ben, I love hearing from you, and I can't wait to hear, I know I'm taking up time, but I can't wait to hear more about this, because I think it's equal parts. I love it. For like, if it wasn't clear, I love it. I think there's something very powerful about working for somewhere that really trusts you to do the work. I think that speaks volumes about, it really is put your money where your mouth is. Like this, you know, it's so much to say, we trust you, we believe in you as an employee. And it's another thing for them to say, and we're gonna let you kind of take, you know, manage your own day, where we're not, you know, all in an office together, you know, watching you. There's something that feels very adult about that. There's something about that's made me feel very like, oh no, I can totally do this, and I can hop on these calls, and I can sort of, you know, play a little larger role in my day because I have a little more control over it. And I would wonder if there's something that I wonder if a lot of people, you know, I'm sure there are a lot of people that don't, you know, they don't like this, and they can't wait to go back into an office. But I sit here and I think about, I'll never forget, and then I'll stop, but I'll never forget, my dad worked for MetLife his entire life. My dad worked as a legacy planner Snoopy icons all over, everywhere, Snoopy icons. And I'll never forget, I went to visit them one day at work. I was like 12 years old, and I saw their office. And the GoDaddy office doesn't look like this, but it was all cubicles. And it was people sitting at cubicles. And I remember looking at them and I just went, is this it? Is this it? Because I don't want this. Is this what I have to look forward to? And he was very clear about like, oh, you know, there's lots of other stuff you can do, but yes, you should look for it. Think about an office. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to know that that's not set in stone for me. I really can't tell you how much it meant to know that I could have a very fruitful and impactful career, and to be able to play it almost on my terms a little bit is absolutely remarkable to me. It really is.
Well, it's interesting you say that. You know, it kind of brings an idea to my mind that for every one of you who is absolutely loving working from home, there may be an extra 1, 2, 3, a half person that's struggling, right? And that's one of the things that I think some of the really great employers, whether they're large, small, or what have you, they're either procuring this themselves or creating it, you know, using some sort of third party, but they are getting, call it an engagement survey from employees. You can use whatever terminology, but an anonymous way that can get information from employees to you as the decision maker without them ratting themselves out, or without ratting out their coworkers, right? Because for as many people who are absolutely just in love with this whole thing, there's plenty of people who are feeling a huge amount of burnout because they don't know, they never feel comfortable turning off the clock, right? Hey, I got nothing else going on. I might as well do it. My boss is emailing me at 2 in the morning. I should probably check in it first thing, right? Yeah, I've got my whole, families, things, whatever. But this, my boss texted me at 7:15, in the morning when I was making kids breakfast. I better text back, right? So for every one of those, that's another person. But if I'm an employee, I have a real tough time going to my superior and saying, you know what, this working from home thing, I'm getting burnt out, right? I also have a really tough time saying, hey, Steve or Joe over there, they're dropping the ball and I'm having to pick up their slack, right? And another thing that is the case is that sorry, Joe, Steve, boss, whoever you are, I'm not really that productive. I get super distracted at home because I see a smudge on the wall and suddenly I got to wipe down every baseboard in the entire house, right? So that's where being able to get feedback from people anonymously and be able to figure out, okay, now what? That's kind of the difference. Instead of the guessing, the hoping, the praying, let's use some data.
I love that. I appreciate that share, Ben, on something tangible that the business owners can gather, whether it be anonymously or not. And Jonathan, thank you for your story, because I think it's important that people understand and respect that there is the availability to impact and empower. And if you allow people to grow and kind of stretch themselves in a meaningful way, it's amazing how quickly they buy in and they trust the process. And just like in a tango, you might know how to dance, you might be leading the dance as a business owner, but guess what? That's not the dance we're learning, right? Last year, everything changed. Now you've got to learn a completely different variation of dancing. And that's where people like Ben, who's a performance advisor, comes in and educates both parties on the new dance and how to make sure if we're leading, we're doing so in a fun and meaningful way, and the employees are enjoying it, engaging, and growing themselves too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Patty.
I think one of the things that's really interesting, and I have to tell you, I really enjoyed your share as well, Jonathan, is that as the owner of the company, we came home too, like a lot of us, right? We came home too. And I have to tell you, part of it for me was keeping my own self accountable. I was distracted to, I can do my laundry while I'm doing Zoom calls and other things too. So, really, it's kind of like when you're working corporate and then you decide you're going to open your own company. And in the beginning, you think, I have all this freedom now, right? Until you get your paycheck and you realize that, if I don't work, I don't get paid, right? And we have to learn to shift that. But even as an employer, I really realized that when I came home And it isn't just me, because guess what? You have relationships with other people. I even had to train my husband, who then thought that, why couldn't I run and do all these errands and all this other stuff that, they just think, oh, well, you're working from home. Like, no, I'm working from home, right? It doesn't mean we can go do all these things. So, my mom, like everybody thinks that, oh yeah, it's so easy. So yes, we do need to understand that, but we're already doing the shift ourselves. So we kind of had to learn it ourselves before we could, when we were having that conversation, because we're doing it too. And it was new for us as well from an employer point of view a lot of the time as well.
That's a great share. And I love the perspective. As an employer or an entrepreneur, you get so burned out from the work you're doing already, and having to try to adapt and evolve and not knowing why or how you're going to do it can be very difficult. It can cause fear and anxiety. And the last thing we want is for small business owners to burn out, because they're the lifeblood of the economy, right? They're the ones that are hiring all of the people out there that want to have great jobs in a meaningful work environment, that they're respected and trusted. And I absolutely love that you shared that as an employer, because employees need to hear that too, right? Stories tell exactly what's going on in our lives, and we're all in the same storm. We're just adapting differently with different boats, right? So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're getting kind of to the end of our hour, but Ben, I'd love to hear kind of how you have this conversation with a small business owner that you're sitting down with for the first time, and they're just like, I don't have any more hair to pull out. Like, what do I do?
That's a really good question. From my perspective, I have to identify kind of where they are today, where they want to go, and what do they have, who do they have alongside of them to get them to where they're going. So in terms of typically what I'm doing is talking about kind of their organization, how their organization in terms of their operations, their finance, their their people side of their business, right? And then we're talking from there and looking at, okay, so what's working, what isn't working, right? We're doing diagnostics, right, on the company, and just trying to figure out, okay, now is there a logical fit, right? Is the challenge that you're not selling enough? Okay, is that a product problem, or is that a people problem, right? Do you not have the right people on the boat? Or do you have the right people on the boat, but they keep leaving because you're not, your benefits stink, your pay stinks, you stink as an employee. You're a grouch, you're a grouchy person. No one wants to be with you. How about you hire somebody who's a little more bubbly and happy, right? You can be the owner, have somebody who's actually interacting with your salespeople, who's not coming around whacking them on on the head with a stick, right? So those sorts of things. So we, usually it's a 3 or 4 step process, and typically I'm, bringing in my experts because I'm kind of the face, and then we have the people who actually do the heavy lifting, and they're, really looking at, hey, how can we potentially advance your company from where you are today and to where you want to go? And usually it's every business problem has a, has a people solution, right? And that's really at the end of the day. So many companies have a financial strategy, they have a, they have a risk strategy, they have whatever, but so few of them have a people strategy. And that's the types of companies that are going to come through on the other side of this with flying colors.
I love that. I love that. Every business problem has a people solution. That is a really, really good way to end this conversation, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people. The new normal, the elephant in the room, is about making sure that we still have the people, the quality individuals that can buy in, stay in, and just help build this amazing journey that you're on as an entrepreneur. So thank you for your share today, Ben. Thank you for the conversation on how you approach it. I think that it's impactful and it's empowering to hear the way that you sit down and have these conversations. And we're just so thankful for you sharing your journey with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, before we let Ben go, does any of the community members want to offer comments or kudos?
I do. I thought this was such a great conversation, just because I'm always reading articles about this. It's very polarizing. Each article is like companies firing people who won't go into work versus company goes full-time remote, and that's just the way of the future. And it's been really, really incredible to, first of all, I can imagine your business has just been the focal point of like this is, I'm never going to say the pandemic was the best time for anyone, but this must have been an incredible time for change and learning and growth for you guys. And it's so important.
Absolutely.
For me specifically, I found it so important to be able to be part of a dialogue where we did talk about the middle ground, and we did talk about, this is not, it's not black and white. No matter how you want it, no matter how badly you want it to be that, it is not black and white. It's different for every company. It's different for every region. It's, are you driving to work? Are you taking the subway? Are you a company with 100 employees, a company with 6 employees? Like, it's different for everyone. And I think it's so important to have these objective, practical conversations about what this could mean for each individual. And I really do, like, the value of this conversation is I will be rewatching this for sure. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I almost said to me, I know this was a large conversation, but I feel like I personally took so much away from this, even looking forward to the next few months and, what it's going to be like to go back to the office and what the adjustments might mean. I thought this was a really, really remarkable discussion. Thank you, Ben. And for answering everyone's questions. We don't usually have such active discussions on these, and it was remarkable. It was fabulous. So thank you for that.
Thank you. No, appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, we had some comments out there, lots of great information. Everybody appreciates being here. Every business problem has a person's solution. Again, Julie's shouting out to you on that one. This was a great meetup, Ben. You did a fantastic job on just kind of having a conversation that wasn't confrontational and overwhelming. You portrayed yourself as what you are, which is an expert in leading the dance. And I just love that. I think everybody should go connect with you and follow your journey so they can listen, learn, leverage, and grow. So where can we send all of our listeners and followers to connect with you, Ben?
Oh, thank you. So LinkedIn is the best place because that's where I have most of my conversations. It's where I think more and more things are just starting there. And so you can find me at LinkedIn, just linkedin.com/Ben-LaCoss, LACOSS. And you can email is also a great way if that's your thing. It's just ben.lacoss, LACOSS. A lot of people want to put an R in my last name, like the sport. Is not like the sport. At Insperity, and Insperity looks like inspire prosperity, and you squish it together. Look forward to, would love to come back down the road and see what the world looks like then.
Oh, 100%. We will definitely have to have you back in. Well,
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good seeing you.
Yep.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
All right, take care.